Pill here. The other day, I was watching an interview with Jeff Booth, who is a very successful tech startup entrepreneur, and he brought up a very interesting idea that relates to behavior change and building habits. You see, a couple of years ago, Jeff attended a conference by one of the world's leading behavior scientists. Here he learned about how companies are designing their apps to be as addictive as possible, and these scientists laid out a special framework that they use to mold human behavior. It's called the PICNUF Framework. The PIC part of PICNUF are things that you want to have more of in your app. P stands for positive, meaning that it must make you feel good. I stands for immediate, meaning that this good feeling must come immediately. And C stands for certain, meaning that this good feeling must always come. It must be certain. On the other hand, the NUF part of PICNUF are things that you want to have less of. N stands for negative, meaning that you should avoid what makes you feel bad. U stands for uncertain, meaning that you should avoid uncertainty. And F stands for future consequences, meaning that you should avoid things that are not immediate. Now, how does this framework apply in real life? Well, Jeff uses the example of smoking. Why do people get hooked on smoking? Well, when you smoke, you get a dopamine hit that makes you feel good, so that's the P for positive. This good feeling also happens immediately, which is the I. And finally, you are sure that you will get this feeling every single time you smoke, which is the C for certain. Smoking uses the PIC part of PICNUF perfectly, which is why it's so addictive. Now, the problem is most people will try to quit smoking by using NUF. They'll tell themselves, okay, smoking is bad for me, it's gonna give me cancer. And what they're doing here is they're focusing on the negative side effects of the action. There's the N for negative. On top of that, it's uncertain whether or not you're even going to get cancer, right? There's tons of elderly smokers that never get cancer just because they're lucky. So that's the U for uncertain. And finally, the consequence of smoking is in the future. You're not going to get cancer immediately after you smoke. It can take years and even decades to develop. So that's the F for future consequence. When you use NUF to try to change your habits, it almost never works. The behavior scientists discovered that the key is to focus on just the PIC. You need to replace the PIC with a better PIC, which basically means you need to replace your bad habit with a good habit that also fulfills the positive, immediate, and certain requirements. Jeff gives a good example of this in action with a story about his daughter. So he was trying to get his 4-year-old daughter to practice the piano, and no matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't get her to build the habit. She would half-ass all her lessons, and you could tell that she didn't really enjoy it. So after learning about the PICNUF framework, Jeff decided to sit down and ask her to play something. She pressed a couple of keys with a bunch of attitude, and it sounded terrible, but Jeff immediately said, "Wow, that was amazing. Can you show me more of what you've learned?" He essentially gave her a compliment, which feels good, so that's the P in PIC. On top of that, this happened immediately after she played her song, so that's the I. And Jeff continued to sit with his daughter every day and continued to compliment her every time after she played. So after a while, the reward she got for playing became certain. She would get a compliment, which made her feel good. So that's the C. Now, after a couple of weeks, Jeff could tell that his daughter actually started to enjoy playing the piano. Her private teacher even said that she learned more in the past few weeks during her lessons than she had for the entire past year. And of course, this became a habit with ease over time. That's what happens when you focus on the PIC instead of the NUF. Now, how does this relate to your life? Well, if you're someone who is trying to change your habits, you should focus on the PIC aspect instead of going for the NUF, which is what most of us instinctively do. Let's say, for example, you've been trying to shake off your bad habit of jerking off. I feel like most of us approach this using NUF. We think to ourselves, okay, I need to stop doing this because it's making me weaker, which is the N for negative. And then we think to ourselves, okay, if I'm able to stick to this for a long enough period of time, I should be able to improve my social life and focus. At least I hope so. Right? We're uncertain whether or not the benefits will actually come. So that's the U for uncertainty. And finally, all the benefits that do come in the distant future. Right? You usually don't see the benefits for at least a couple of days or even weeks. So that's the F for future consequence. Instead, what you want to do is focus on the PIC. For example, every time you overcome an urge, you could talk to a friend. You could tell them that you just overcame an urge, to which they'll probably say, good job. So that's the P. This good job also comes immediately after telling them, that's the I. And it's also certain, assuming that they're a good friend. That's the C. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to work for all of you. It's just something that fits in the PIC framework. So I think it has a much higher chance of working as compared to feeling guilty and trying to logically convince yourself to abstain from jerking off. What you should do in general is ask yourself, how can I think about behavior change through the lens of PIC instead of NUF? Doing so will allow you to come up with many strategies that you can experiment with. And finally, let me leave you with one last example of PIC that I've observed a couple of weeks ago. So there's this video that keeps getting recommended to me on YouTube by a guy called James Scholes. This video is basically about how he was able to study for 12 hours every single day for months. Now, of course, this really intrigued me because I've never heard of anyone being able to do that consistently. But if you think about it through the PICNUF framework, it kinda makes sense. Every time he studies, he live streams it. This is a positive experience because people are studying with him, posting positive comments. This is also an instant and certain reward because the moment he turns on the stream, he gets a couple of viewers that can cheer him on. Now, I'm not saying that this is the only reason he was able to pull this off. He clearly has a very strong internal desire to succeed, and having a strong why like this is extremely important. All I'm saying is that his current live stream setup made it even easier for him to build this habit because it uses PIC. Most people who want to study approach it with NUF. If I don't study, I'll be a failure, and my parents will yell at me. That's the N. Even if I study, I'm not sure if I'll do well. I'm not sure if I'll be able to succeed. That's the U. And the benefits from studying won't come to fruition until the day of the test, which is usually days away. That's the F. Focus on the PIC and not the NUF, so that you can make certain good habits as addictive as possible, just like those apps that these behavior scientists have got us all hooked on. This episode was brought to you by Audible. Building a habit of reading is extremely powerful, but sitting down and pulling out a physical book isn't always possible. Audible makes building this habit extremely easy by allowing you to consume valuable, life-changing content on the go wherever you are. Just the other week, I took a 9-hour bus ride and I was able to listen to a book the entire time. Audible is now giving members even more with the all-new Plus catalog. All members will have access to thousands of select audiobooks, podcasts, Audible originals, guided fitness and meditation programs, and much, much more. Go to www.audible.com/improvement pill or text improvement pill to 500-500 to get one free audiobook, a 30-day free trial, and explore the Plus catalog today. On the bus, I listened to The Cancer Code by Dr. Jason Fung, which goes over a new way of looking at cancer and some ways that you can help prevent it in the first place. I highly recommend you to check it out if you plan on living a long and healthy life. Besides that, guys, stay tuned.